Welcome to the August 7th, 2018 episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
Mr. Ryu.
And special guest...
Hey, this is Jason from jasonscustoms.com.
Greetings.
Yeah, we actually had an invite from Jason to come on to the podcast when we had talked about his retro board last week. He was gracious enough to come on and talk a bit about it. So we're really glad and flattered to have you on, Jason.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Yeah. So we added you on Twitter to the post, and it looks like we sent up a flag.
You gotta stay in tune with Twitter. Nowadays, you have to.
Yeah. And this is a really good time because you're coming out with your new retro board product, which we'll of course go into a little bit more in depth. And we also have Evo this week, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's actually going on right now.
Yeah. So it'll be over with by the time I think we post the podcast here. But I'm sure there's some fun stuff going on there. Have you seen the guy going around with the modified Guitar Hero controller, just kicking people's butts?
I have not.
No, I haven't seen it. I've not at Evo this year, but I've seen that. I think it was probably the same guy before. I've seen that controller kicking around a few streams.
That's awesome. I don't know whether it's awesome to lose against that or like terrible to lose against that.
No, it's awesome to lose against that because
like,
the guy's that good. It reminds me of those people with those weird YouTube videos of like beating GoldenEye's facility in less than 2 minutes and 5 seconds with like the Wii steering wheel accessory, or like beating Dark Souls bosses with the Donkey Konga controllers. It's like, god damn, dude.
Actually, speaking of like interesting arcade sticks that are kind of funny, like on Twitter, a friend like me, this guy in like one of the events, I think CEO, he has like one of those anime hug pillows. It's just like with an arcade stick like on it.
I think he plays it vertically too, if I remember correctly.
What?
Yeah.
Well, there's also I think it was the former editor-in-chief of EGM, Molly. Actually has like a poison control joystick that's kind of like that. So yeah, that she actually showed to Ono back in the day, which was pretty great. There's a picture of both of them. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. So anyway, we were really great to have you on. Jason is, of course, a really great and fantastic contributor to the arcade and fighting stick community. We want to, first of all, thank you, of course, for being on the show again. And we just have some questions here just for our fans to familiarize themselves with the podcast and everything here. So, Jason, can you give it an overview of what the kinds of things you've designed and provide for the community?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess the big thing that I do right now is the Panzer Fightstick, which is, to the best of my knowledge, one of the first, if not the first, all-metal fight stick in the community. Of course, now there's a number of other fight sticks that are metal out there, but I think back in 2012 when I guess I officially launched it, it was the first all-metal one. Besides that, I've built super guns. I actually kind of put those on hiatus when I moved over here to Japan just because I don't have the big workshop anymore. And those allow you to play arcade boards at home without a big arcade cabinet. We did, let's see, all sorts of random stuff. A good buddy of mine, Mike, and I, he developed a wireless solution for controllers that we did a bunch of and sent those out. I didn't really get my hands dirty in the design there. Mike took care of all that, but that was something cool that we brought to market. We've done some replacement Pro cables that on the Mad Catz TE2s, and actually you can put them on a Panzer as well. Brought those out and kind of evolved those over time from handmade to machine-made molded cables and stuff like that. So that's kind of the big stuff right now. And then of course, collaborating with Brooke has been awesome. They started off making the super converters in about it was 2016, maybe it was even late 2015 when I learned about those guys. I contacted them, and at the time, one of the U.S. sales reps, Stephanie, I reached out and told her, hey, with the PlayStation 4 coming out and the Xbox One coming out and everything kind of shifting over there, what about taking all your super converter technologies, merging them together and creating kind of a universal fight board that'll work on all of these? And through some conversations...
you actually contributed to the UFB. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
Through many phone calls between the U.S. and Taiwan, and then her coming out to Southern California and visiting with Arcade Shock, myself, and Paradise Arcade Shop, we all sat down, had breakfast, and talked about it, and said, hey, this is what we want to do, and this is how much money we're willing to put up. And between the three of us, more so Arcade Shock and Paradise, I think about $40,000 got put on the table, and the Universal Fight Board came out. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, so with that, I helped a little bit with the design, layout, and stuff like that, because I really wanted to make it easy for my customers who already had the Panzer Fightstick, because the original one used a PS360 Plus, and I really wanted to make it an easy swap for those guys. So, through some iterations, we talked about how to lay the board out and stuff, and there we go. That came out, and then the PS4 Plus with audio board, that had a couple iterations, and finally was able to contribute there and kind of guide them to make it just like the Universal Fight Board, so that all the easy mod type stuff that we've designed for, like the Obsidian and the HRAP N and the Fighting Edge and the TE2, TE2 Plus, TES Plus, that make it easy to install all those, made it so that all of those boards are interchangeable now, so it makes it super easy to install any of them.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah, I thank you for that too, because I actually had an old Hori Tekken 5 stick that I decided to use with like the Brooke board, and it was very easy to install. Like I love it.
Yeah, they did a great job with it, and Brooke, they are an awesome partner for not just those of us in the business who make and design sticks or sell sticks and stuff like that, but for the community at large, just because a lot of the board manufacturers out there, and you even see this with some of the big companies, they put the product out and the extent of the support is, all right, here it is, and we'll get to fixing it when we can. And Brooke has done an amazing job with PS4 firmware update comes out, within 24 hours the Universal Fight Board works again.
They're on it, yeah. They're on it with all of their super converters. They, you were just sharing some of the Dreamcast firmware for the Universal Fight Board for their super converter for Dreamcast, and they're adding a feature that I would never think that they would ever add.
Yeah, so Tim Huang, he's the one of the I actually don't know what he does at Brooke. I talk to him all the time, and I think he's one of the engineers, actually. And he and I were chatting, and he said, hey, can you test this out for us? We updated the firmware for the Dreamcast super converter. I said, okay, sure. What did you guys change? It was pretty awesome before. And he said, we've added VMU functionality to it. I was like, what are you talking about? There's no port to plug a VMU in. He's like, no. We've made it so that it looks like a VMU is plugged in with your controller, so you can save right to the converter. And I was like, send it to me right now. As soon as I get home from work, I want to try this thing out.
When I saw you tweet out the image, I didn't even understand that it was a converter, because I read that it had VMU support. I'm like, well, it's... I thought you tweeted Fightstick stuff, but that can't be right.
Yeah. So, I guess one of the perks of working with Brooke and helping collaborate on some of their products is you get to test a lot of stuff for them, too. So actually, there's only a couple of us who got to test one of these super converters for the Dreamcast when they first kind of came out with it. And, this is one of those products that a lot of people didn't know they wanted or needed, and, it wasn't on anyone's radar until, again, Arcade Shop called up Brooke and said, we need this. Let's make this. and I will pay, I will buy this many of them right now if we can make this. And so with again, with that investment into the community by Arcade Shock and with Brooke, that's why this thing exists. And Brooke's not one to sit on their laurels. Everyone kind of complained, oh yeah, great, it's a converter, but there's no VMU support, right? Because everyone's going to find a problem with everything.
Sure, of course.
It's easy, right? It's super easy.
It's easy to complain. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brooke looked at that as not a what? They looked at it as okay, challenge accepted, and now here we are today. And I think in about a week or 2 weeks, an update's going to come out, and this is going to be available for everyone who has one of these converters.
Now I know you're just looking at releasing this, and I'm not getting ahead of. I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself. But is it possible to add that to the retro board in the future?
So that was the first question I asked him. When am I going to get the firmware update for the retro board? And he said, I'll let you know.
Fair enough.
So now the thing to consider with all of this is, the Dreamcast converter, it's very purpose built, right? PS3, PS4 stick in, Dreamcast stick out. So the software can be pretty compact to make that happen. I suspect that the processor that kind of controls all the stuff in this may be similar to this one in the retro board, but there's a finite amount of memory on those processors.
Sure.
And with the retro board being able to support, I'm going to have to look at my console rack here just to make sure I get most, if not all of them. Saturn, PS2, PS1, PC Engine / TurboGrafx 16, Dreamcast, Super Nintendo, GameCube, and NES. And, oh, by the way, PC and PS3. That's a lot more firmware and code in that on that processor. So if they can do it, I'm sure they will. And if they can't, it's probably going to be due to a technical limitation of the board, meaning it just ran out of space.
Sure. Well, that's understandable. I was very excited when they announced that too, because I've bought pretty much every one of their retro line. So I have pretty much every old system you can think of. By and large, unless it's a 3DO or a Jaguar or CDI, I pretty much have it. So, nice. I bought their Neo Geo one when I got that, and I bought their PS1, PS2 one. So I was excited that they're still working on functionality. It's just really cool that they're all about that. But I'll continue on here, and I did want to get some more background on your history. How did you get into the business of this kind of stuff?
So it's actually kind of weird and interesting, I guess. So by my normal day job, I'm a submarine officer, and part of that is being a nuke engineer. So, I graduated from college with a degree in math and joined the Navy because I needed a job, and my whole family did it, and went to nuclear power school and learned how the reactor plant worked and all that good stuff, and that's kind of, my background in terms of why I like tinkering with things. Unfortunately, when you get a commission, you don't actually get to tinker with anything. You just got to tell everyone else what to do. So I haven't been able to get my hands dirty with my normal day job. So that kind of, you get some sort of energy built up to want to tinker and build things, and you have to get an outlet somewhere. And so I started kind of tinkering with old consoles in about 2006, 2007. Then when I was stationed over in Italy, I moved back and unfortunately had a bad experience with some movers, and most of my retro console collection ended up missing. It's what I told you this before we began, but I have relatives over there, and it's not like a stereotype or anything. It's like you actually have to bribe people to get your stuff back. A lot of times. It's interesting, and it's funny, kind of on a tangent. There's a clear line of demarcation in Italy. Southern Italy is way different than Northern Italy, and your experience in both are going to be awesome and very different. So, unfortunately, I got back to the States and was like, hey, where's all my stuff? And, so I assumed some nice Italian family somewhere is playing my old Nintendo and Super Nintendo and stuff like that. But when I got back to the States, I was like, well, geez, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I don't really want to reinvest all of this money in this stuff because I'm going to be, I move all the time. And, I was kind of cruising around on Craigslist, I think, just bored one afternoon, and I came across a Neo Geo arcade cabinet for sale.
Awesome.
And I said, I want one. I want that right now. My wife's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I remember as a kid, my neighbor, when I was, living in Michigan, he had like a Galaga and a Pac-Man and, Pac-Man or a Donkey Kong Jr. cabinet, I think. He had a bunch of arcades in his basement, and, he was that cool guy in the block that had, everything. Dual income, no kids, had all the toys, pool, all that stuff, so all the block parties were at their house. And I remember sitting in front of those arcade cabinets for hours. So I was like, this is a good deal. It was like $350.
Good.
I called the guy up, and I said, hey, I'll come pick it up today if it's still for sale. And he said, yeah, sure, no problems. So I went up, picked it up, brought it home, and it worked. Everything was good. And then I opened it up and saw kind of the rat's nest of wires inside and the hacked up loom and stuff like this, and said, oh, this isn't going to work.
Oh, wow.
And
was it a red cab or a gold cab? Do you know?
It was a converted cab, actually.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't even a real Neo Geo cabinet. It was a Blasteroids cabinet. And, at the time, just getting into the hobby, I didn't really think too much about it. And now I realize that poor Blasteroids cabinet would have been really nice as a Blasteroids cabinet, and getting a big red, like I eventually did, would be the way to go. So, I got that, and then, there's some nuanced differences with Neo Geo versus regular, arcade stuff, the JAMA standard, and then I kind of started doing more research, because once you kind of get one arcade cabinet, then you kind of want a second one, and then you kind of want a third one.
Oh yeah. So you can't just have one.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard that from multiple people.
Yeah,
not just you.
Yeah. So I went to I started to kind of delve into the community a lot, and then I learned about what these super guns are, and I kind of saw a bunch of people making them. I was like, oh, it's just a bunch of wires. I could do that, and so I built one out of an old ammo can and made that work. And then I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, but how am I going to actually use it? I don't have controllers for it. So I found some just like Hammond enclosures or something like that, and just drilled in some holes and put some buttons and stuff in it. And that's kind of when I started going into the Fightstick route, because I learned how all that stuff works. And then I was like, drilling all this stuff kind of stinks. I can do this better. Let me just hop in CAD and design something, and let me see if I can find a metal shop that'll make it for me. And just through kind of all that, I got my first fight stick done, and someone said, "Ooh, that looks pretty cool. Can you make me one?" Yeah, sure. So I made him one, and then someone else said it, and then another person said it. Now, here we are in 2018, and the Panzer fight stick lives.
Yeah. You're on the third iteration, right? You're on Panzer 3 right now.
That's right.
And you put the best name to it. It's built like a tank. I mean, it's so cool.
It's interesting. So originally I called them tank sticks.
Oh, okay.
And I got a really, really interesting email from a company that said, "Hey, we already used that name. You can't use it."
No, thank you.
And it was the X Arcade guys.
Oh,
because they have
it was Tan Stick.
It was their X Arcade thing, and they called it Tank Stick. And I was like, I don't really think anyone's going to confuse my all metal joystick with your crazy MAME controller thing. But I'm not going to put my pocketbook at risk, because I don't know how much money you guys have and how much business you do. So fine, I won't call it the Tank Stick. And I kind of reached back into my military history knowledge and said, yeah, Panzer, that's German for tank, and they were pretty good tanks back in the day. We'll call it that.
Sounds better too.
It does.
Yeah, and it works out real well. Yeah, it worked out real well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I have mine, and that's actually what I'm going to throw my retro board in, and I'm just waiting to get some custom art going for it. But
nice.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to make this one Dodonpachi themed, or Donpachi themed. So I'm going to have like the B from the series on there, and I'm going to have gold buttons and a gold joystick ball top. So.
Very cool.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I also have the Ikaruga one almost finished for my Obsidian that I've been talking about on the podcast here. So I hope to put up a video of that once that's all done.
Yeah.
And speaking of, I recently bought your Universal Fight Board Easy Install for the Obsidian.
Good.
and I followed your video instructions on how to install it. Do you find that you receive better feedback from your customers when you make those sort of videos?
I receive less questions.
Okay,
Fair enough.
So my whole operation is really me. And right now, being in Japan, I've enlisted the help of Arcade Shop to, continue shipping Panzers and some select things for me. And then my buddy Devin and his wife Carmen in Florida to ship like the arcade panel replacements I make and stuff like that, so that we can continue trying to push out as much as I can without overrunning Carmen and Devin's house and taking over too much room in the Arcade Shop warehouse and having to pay too much more for the space I'm renting.
Yeah, I was wondering if that's where you're going to be shipping your product out of, like from your website.
Yeah, so all my stuff right now, I've got two, I call them warehouses, but like I said, one is actually Arcade Shop, which actually is a warehouse, and then one is Rageous X in Reversal, aka Devin and Carmen in Florida. It's one of their bedrooms in their house. Devin actually, he lived in Hollywood, right down the street from me when I was in Los Angeles at my last command, and we met up at EVO 2016, and Carmen and I hit it off. We had a great time, and he was so close. He came over. He actually owns like 3 or 4 Panzers, I think, he's like, hey, you're getting close to retirement because I've only got about 4.5 years left in the Navy. And you want to go back to Florida where you're from, right? And I said, yep. And he said, well, that's where I'm going right now. So let's see if we can't work together. So I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's try this. And they picked up some of the shipping stuff for me, and it's been working out real well. And so they ship out a couple things, and mostly like the Mad Cats and Hori replacement panels I do, and some of the arcade panel replacements I do. And then Arcade Shop does the heavy lifting with the Panzers, just because they got more space.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also noticed that when performing the install for the Obsidian, there were a couple moments where you have to be extremely careful or risk damaging a component. One was like the PlayStation button, and when you talked about that on there, and also there were a couple tense moments there with the touchpad and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to thank you first of all for warning me very, very, very well. You were like, "Be careful here." Like
it's no matter how easy you make these things. Unfortunately, the new joysticks and they just those flat ribbon cables and the connectors are so delicate. And I'll tell you that. There's been a couple times I've ham-handed it, and I'm like, well, that just cost me $175. Sweet.
Yeah, Lotus and I have had a couple tense moments recently. We were installing PSIOs. I don't know if you're familiar with PSIOs. They're like they go into the back of PlayStation 1 and allow you to. It's basically an optical drive emulator for your PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
We were like removing the CD-ROM drive so we could send them to be modded to in Australia, and there were a couple tense moments there too.
Yeah, because that stuff's like like a quarter century old, maybe 20 years old. So like the little white tabs are scary. The pulling out the ribbon cables are scary. Yeah. Like if we had bought them new, that might have been one thing. But it's 2018, so it's like touching anything is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Those zero force sockets are not what they say they
liars. They are liars.
We've had a history. Our group of friends has had a history of like doing intricate electrical work. I helped Lotus and Mr. Ryu put together their computers. We built gaming PCs from scratch, and Mr. Ryu actually had to bend like the little tiny.
That was incredible. Yeah, what was that called? The processor?
It was the motherboard.
Yeah, it's for the motherboard for like where you put the processor in, and there's like one pin that like was bent. I was like, shit.
And the thing with those is that you have to bend them absolutely perfectly straight, or else everything's ruined. So like, so Mr. Ryu somehow managed to do that by hand with I don't know how he did it, but like
it's just a screwdriver, and I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, like that was the most like delicate finagling.
Yeah, when I built a new rig last year, and I decided to go full ham on it, and probably spent way too much money on it. But when you're putting an i9X processor in a $479 motherboard with like a $1,800 processor, you're like,
Yeah.
oh god,
Yeah.
I better not
Fuck
screw
this up.
Yeah. And then when you water
not
cool
returning
it makes
that.
it even worse.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. My question here for you was, how many sticks did you go through while designing like each one of these things? I mean, I'm sure one might be easier than the other. I mean, you said you didn't have any support at all from Comba, but I'm sure some of the other companies are a little bit better with you.
No, surprisingly,
really?
yeah. They now hold on. Let me scratch that. Markman did help me with one pinout on the Panther for the touchpad because they didn't mark it on the PCB and they didn't use the way it's designed. It didn't have a very straightforward way to kind of figure out which one did which. Because the touchpad actually has like 6 different signals in it, I think, or 5 different signals in it, and then a power and a ground. And you definitely don't want to get power and ground messed up because then you'll fry the touchpad.
Sure.
So there was with the Panthera, I got a little bit of help from him for that, but I asked Quamba if they'd be willing to help me out with just some measurements, and they, for a lack of better words, they told me to pack sand.
Wow.
They weren't real happy with some of the reviews of their sticks I did. Because I do stick reviews on YouTube, my breaking down the stick episodes, and I look at it from a modding perspective. How
Sure.
easy is it to mod things? Not necessarily how responsive is the joystick, that kind of stuff. But hey, how easy is it going to be to get in here and swap out your buttons, artwork, and stuff like that? And when I did the Quamba drone, I gave it an F for modding capability because it's not a great stick to mod. You can throw buttons in there and stuff like that. The basic stuff is easy, but if you want to do anything more than that, it's not a good candidate for it, and that's okay. The market needs arcade sticks like that.
Yeah.
So they were not super thrilled with that, and they wouldn't send me any more products to review. And then when I reached out to ask them if they would help me out with some measurements, they said, nope. Thanks, but no thanks. So, what I ended up doing is, I take the board out and get my calipers out and just start measuring. And I went through about 3 PCBs, and I actually did it on deployment last year. So a lot of it was,
Wow.
Just sitting in front of my computer away from all my stuff at home, measuring things out and saying, okay, in 4 months when I get home, I can send this off to PCB Fab and see if it works. Wow. And the first 2 were definitely the wrong size. Definitely mismeasured a couple spots, and ended up. Interestingly, I kind of dusted off this old Silhouette Cameo cutter thing that my mom gave me for Christmas. It's used for like crafting stuff, and I threw the board outline in Illustrator and exported it to a file format that this thing would cut. And so I cut it out on a piece of cardboard and fit it in, and I did that for about 9 hours one day. Just
Wow.
small iterative, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter changes here and there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that process goes. It probably takes, if I tallied up all the man hours, probably about 100 man hours per easy mod to do. So when that's just the mechanical layout, and then if there's any coding required, like the TE2 and the TE2 Plus, we put some microprocessors on there to do things with the LEDs and the left stick, right stick mode and stuff like that, because Brooke makes it a great board that's kind of universal. It's all common ground, very good. But a lot of these other stick manufacturers, they don't necessarily make things common ground if they swap LEDs. So it's it's stuff like that. They control the negative part of the LED instead of the positive part, or they control the other, whatever with their processors. So you got to adapt all that up. So again, I when I get into the coding aspect of it, I can code a little bit. I'm not great, but it would take me probably 10 times as long. I call up Mike and say, hey man, I need some help with this, and we come up with an arrangement. I send him some prototype boards, and he makes it work, and he sends it back to me. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, with those tense moments, you said you even damaged like the little rubber part on the first time, and like, where are you gonna get that little rubber part from? You can't just order that somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, it's those are actually not looking back, I probably could have found some of the replacements because the dome switches. These companies aren't going to make unique parts. It just doesn't make sense from a cost perspective. But the problem is knowing exactly what that part's called and finding the exact right part number. Next thing you know, you're spending $200-300 in shipping of parts back and forth from Mouser or DigiKey, and you're like, finally I got it. Where you're like, well, screw it, I'll just go buy another $139 stick and save myself 10 hours worth of headaches. So that's where the time versus money thing comes into perspective.
Yeah, you don't know what Chinese factory that came from, that Comba's working with or whatever,
Exactly.
So well, we talked about the announcement of your retro board last week, and I was really excited. In fact, Mr. Ryu actually was like, "Oh man, you need to look at this." Like he messaged me, and I've been trying to build this classic gain stick for a while. I bought one of your Panzer 3 stick cases and all the parts and everything, and I initially was thinking about putting one of your old easy multi-console Cthulhu boards in it, but once I saw this, I was like, okay, you're working with Brooke. Brooke is like really held up high in the community, and I was like, I want this to be in my stick, or else I'm just gonna regret it. So I jumped right on it. What was your impetus for designing the retro board in general?
Well, so we dabbled a little bit with the Cthulhu, and unfortunately it didn't work out as well as I'd hoped, because there's a lot of promise there. And unfortunately, Toodles, he just doesn't support it anymore. It's one of those projects. He did it. It works. And I'm sure he's focused on other things right now, and he considers this the Cthulhu a done kind of thing. Why spend any more time or effort on it? And that's great. I mean, because a lot of people use them. I actually, that was one of the first PCBs I put in a Fightstick I built, and it works really well. Unfortunately, the batch that we designed and changed up to make it what I would call easy install, easy mod, or easy ready, I had a little bit of an issue because there were part differences to get to that easy build situation. And unfortunately, not having access to the back-end software of it to tweak some timing and stuff like that to kind of troubleshoot it, it just didn't make sense to continue going down that path. PS360 Pluses are out there, but that supply has dried up pretty significantly because Aki Shop, I think the UFB negatively affected sales of the PS360 Plus because everything's shifting over to the PS4, or Xbox One at the time, and that's what everyone was using the PS360 Plus really for, was the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 support.
Sure.
So from their perspectives, it didn't make sense to keep making them because vendors just weren't buying them anymore in favor of the Universal Fight Board. And I was talking to Vin at Arcade Shock, and I was like, man, it would be really great if we still had a retro board because, I have a lot of stuff that I want to play. And, I was getting back into retro consoles again and, wanting to play, Third Strike without having to break out my CPS3 hardware every time and, crazy stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'd really like to use one of my fight sticks, not have to go buy, 50 different fight sticks to, play all these different games. And, so he said, hey, I may have started talking to Brooke about this already. Let's go to Taiwan and chat with him. I said, all right, let's do it. So in February of this year, we actually flew out and talked to Brooke and, finalized that deal, after, talking to him, over the interwebs for a couple months and, at least when I got tied in. And went and said, hey, this is how we think this needs to work, and this is what we recommend, and oh, by the way, it'd be really awesome if we could make this up with the PS3, PS4 Universal Fight Board so that you could put them both in one stick and then have everything from NES to PlayStation 4 on one arcade stick. And they're like, oh, that's a really good idea. And, at that time, I had gotten some USB switching experience under my belt with the Kaimana Chameleon I designed. And I said, this is how I did it over here. I would recommend, kind of combining some functions here and here so that we can keep the part list down. And they said, oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay. And a couple months later, we had a prototype. And now here we are with it about to launch. Well, it's launched officially, and it'll be getting out to everyone's hands here in the next couple weeks when we get them in stock.
That's awesome. I personally wanted to build my arcade stick because I love shmups. I'm a big shmup guy, and I'm casual in the fighting games. Mr. Ryu's more into the fighting games, but I'm sure there's a big community out there that still likes to play the old versions of even if it's not arcade perfect. Their SNES versions of their Street Fighters and all that stuff. So I particularly though wanted to play the old Star Soldier games on the Famicom and NES. And that's what I'm going to be doing when this stick is completed. Now, that was my impetus for building the stick in the first place. I wanted to be able to, I don't know if you've ever played that game, but you can push out 16 shots per second if you're fast enough on the stick buttons. So Takehashi Meijin was the guy who was working for Hudson at the time. He could do that, and he was famous with little kids over there for being able to do that on Star Soldier. So I always wanted to see, you can't really do it on the controller really well. You need to put it down on a flat surface, and it would be uncomfortable because it's small. And I've always looked for arcade joysticks for the NES. Not to play fighting games, obviously. There's Urban Champion and Joy Mech Fight and Turtles Tournament Fighters, and those are the only ones I know of, right?
Yeah.
So
Karate Champ.
Karate Champ. It is a fighting game.
There you go. Okay.
Isn't
I'll
there
give you that. I've been wanting to do this for the Star Soldier games and other shmups on the system and stuff, and the NES Advantage just didn't really cut it. And then I looked into the Famicom joysticks, and they're all getting really expensive because the well-made ones made by ASCII and Hori from back then are all they're antiques now. So getting ones in good condition are over $100 now. And they're not even as good as arcade parts are right now. So
exactly, yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So I was looking for all kinds of different methods, maybe even hacking a controller together, that kind of thing. And I was just having a billion of these hacked together things that barely work isn't the way to go. It just isn't, because I have all these systems and it just doesn't make sense. So, do you think there will be an influx of people playing these classic shmups and fighters competitively because of this, this kind of board that you're coming out with?
I hope so. I know that, Missing Person over at SRK, he's really big into the Sailor Moon S game on the Super Famicom. It's a fighting game. Yeah,
we played that over at MagFest last year.
That game is bullshit. It's fun, but it's so broken.
To be honest with you, I didn't even know it was a thing, and then all of a sudden I just started seeing Corey post a lot about it, and I was like, what the heck is this? So I fired up my my NES emulator, or was it on Super Nintendo? I forget. And I was like, oh look, right there, I've got the ROM for it. Let me see. No, this isn't for me.
Wasn't that the game where maybe Mr. Ryu showed me or something? Wasn't that the game where you could just easily full combo people or do stupid damage with special moves or something?
That's one of the things in that game. The game is really goofy because you got invincible reversals that are completely safe on block. You got you got infinite supers once you reach 25% health.
Oh, it's some one characters of those where you get powered up when you get low health.
Yeah. And Sailor Mars is old Sagat in a Super Turbo, but on steroids because of that projectile recovery.
That just makes you think of Dark Souls, where there are those two rings that greatly enhance your attack and your defense when you're at low health. So you're constantly playing this one hit and you die game, but you're just murdering everything in your path.
Well, there's several like pretty decent console exclusive fighters for the Super Nintendo. I mean, you have Gundam Wing Endless Waltz. People still play every once in a while. You see that.
Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
the other
Turtle
Turtle Tournament Fighters.
I love
Turtle
that
Combat.
game. Like on the Genesis, that was my jam. I loved that game.
I
Love
grew
it
up with
so
the
much.
Genesis one, but that game is freaking impossible.
Okay,
Oh, it's horrible.
I made it to
be
Krang
100%
once, and I was
clear.
so proud of myself.
like
I
that game
am not
is
good at fighting games, so that's why I build stuff because I can do that well. But I love to get my butt whooped in fighting games.
Yeah.
But Turtle, on the Genesis, that Turtles game, that was one of the few things I could play and actually beat my little brother in. And so having a bad day, hey, let's go play Turtles. I don't want to lose today. All right,
I just remember arcade mode just mopped the floor with me every
Yeah.
single time. I was just like, I just don't know what to
Yeah.
do. And there's apparently, I think there's a setting, I read this on Hardcore Gaming 101, there's like a mode where you go through something insane. There's like 50 rounds or 100 rounds. Like,
Wow.
can you make it to the end? And it's like, no, you really can't. And Hardcore Gaming 101 said they used like endless save states to see what happens when you finally beat it. And there's just like nothing. It's just like, good job.
Ah,
It's the worst.
that is the worst.
I know there's also a Rama 1/2, or there's a couple Rama 1/2
Oh yeah,
fighters.
SNES, yeah.
I
Hard
played a
Battle.
couple of those. Like I don't remember too much of them.
I remember that
Just
from
kinda
college.
fun
Just
as
like,
a
I'm
kid.
a good again. He's just like fast punching everybody. Yes. You can play as both Ramas. That's kind of cool.
So, Brooke, the manufacturer of the Universal Fight Board and a whole line of super converters that allow the controller and joystick on other consoles, and many other trusted products, is partnering with you on the retro board, right?
Yeah, that's right. With both Arcade Shock and I, so that's the two places you're going to be able to pick them up in my shop and at Vin's over at Arcade Shock. And the cool thing that Brooke did is, they really appreciated our help, and we actually have our logos on the box and the board. So it's
That's
kind of
awesome.
nice. It's kind of to me, it's like it's a kind of a proud papa moment almost. You see
Sure.
your logo on there right next to Brooke, and you're like, that's awesome. My wife, she wasn't as excited about it as I was.
No, I mean, what's cool to me is like maybe I have my priorities backward, but I particularly like the fact that it's on the board, because even though a lot of people won't see it because it's inside the stick, like if you ever crack it open, it's like, no, this is legit. Like there it is. Like the parts
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Well, I know that the board currently supports NES and Famicom. It supports the expansion port for the Famicom, right? If you do an RJ45 cable for that, the second controller port.
Well, so I have. Okay, so I actually have two Famicoms that I've picked up since I've been here. I've got my top loader that is like the toaster, that we're used to in the West with is the toaster, and that's got a side port on it with I think it's a DB15.
Yeah, I have an AV Famicom as well. That's the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and then I've also got the twin system, the Sharp twin system that the controllers are hardwired in with the side port.
Oh, that's the one where the second controller has the microphone,
Yeah, it's weird, right?
where you can clear rooms in Zelda with it.
Yeah, unfortunately my twin system I haven't been able to get the disk drive working, which after
That's a common problem.
Yeah, I it's interesting. I picked up another disk system to go with my top loader, and that works flawlessly. And I realized that one of my disk system games doesn't work in it, but all my other ones do. So I'm thinking that through the trials and tribulations of trying to realign my disk drive in my Sharp, I was using the bad disk. So I may have to give it another go and use the other Metroid disk I know works. But,
yeah, I know they're prone to segment defragmentation and also getting demagnetized. I know they're prone to that.
Yeah, so if you have the NES that has what we would consider the standard ports, then you use an RJ45 to NES cable and it works just fine. I was actually playing Mario Brothers 3 with it the other day because it's
real cool.
like one of the few games I had that was like I could just grab real quick and plug in. Like, oh, cool. I don't like this, but it works.
Yeah.
So.
And let me see. Yeah, you also have SNES and Famicom, obviously. TurboGrafx 16, and it'll probably work with PC Engine, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, so
two different control
I
ports.
have a PC Engine. I've got a Turbo Duo, and it works fine. That's what I tested it on. I had a TurboGrafx 16. Emphasis on had.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Yeah, the controllers are the same. Just instead of using a mini DIN like they did on the PC Engine, apparently Americans, we need bigger plugs, so we use the standard DIN. So.
Yeah, and then you have Saturn on there, Dreamcast, PS1, PS2, PS3.
Yep.
Do you have any other plans for any other console support in the future? I know, namely, I'm sure a lot of fans have been asking about Genesis and Neo Geo. I believe you asked about you answered about Genesis when I asked you online.
Yeah, so I think that the Genesis is probably going to be a no-go, and
Okay.
The only reason I say that, and I'm not 100% sure yet, I've actually, fortunately, the fine folks at iFix Retro, Ben Fong, he is in Brooklyn, New York. He reached out to me, and he and I were chatting. We talk online a bunch, and he said, "Hey, what's the chance we can get Genesis working on this thing?" I said, "I don't know. I think it's pretty slim based on all the controller schematics I can find." And I said, "But I don't have a Genesis, and Master Systems, or excuse me, not Master Systems, Mega Drives here in Japan, surprisingly, are very expensive. I haven't found one for less than about $110.
Damn.
I think it's because they didn't sell as well in Japan as they did in America.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think picking up a European one's pretty easy. A South American one pretty easy.
Sure.
U.S. apparently was easy. Ended up costing me $40.
Yeah, U.S. is not bad. Yeah.
But so Ben picked me one up at the little local game shop there, and he sent it out to me. And I'm gonna, once I get it here in Japan, I'm gonna plug it in, make sure it works. I have no issues with it, and I'm going to forward it over to Brooke in Taiwan and let their engineers go at it. But just to see and confirm what I think is going to be a no. And the reason I say no is because the way the Genesis worked, there was a select pin for the 6-button pads that had to, the game would actually spit out a piece of code that said, hey, take this pin high so that you can use 6 buttons. And when you kind of do the math, the Genesis had nine connectors. One was power, one was ground. The other 7 were signals, and unfortunately, you only have 8 on an RJ45. So something ends up having to give, and I don't know that they're going to be able to figure that out. So Genesis, I would love to get it supported, but I don't have real high hopes.
Okay.
And then for Neo Geo, a lot of people ask about that. Neo Geo is an interesting system because their controllers were what I would consider dumb controllers. There were no circuit boards inside of them, unless you had a CD, like one of the pads.
Yeah,
and
I have one of those, yeah.
Yeah, that had a circuit board in it, but only because it had to have the shape of the pad and it had the little double switch buttons on it.
Sure.
But really, with the Neo Geo, you can literally take a button with a wire hook, or 2 wires hooked up to it, and I think it's pin 8 is ground, and then pin, insert any other pin here, and you just plug those 2 wires in and you hit that button and it works. So there's actually no PCB required to make it work on a Neo Geo. So if you end up wanting to use your Fightstick or Arcade Stick on Neo Geo, it's probably best just to pick up one of Brooke's converters or
I was going to say that,
or one of the undammed USBs, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, geez, you have a PS3 to PS4 to Neo Geo converter, and why not just use that? Because your board supports PS3, so I assume that'll work.
Yeah.
And I was thinking for Genesis, I'm a big Genesis player, and I'm mostly for the shmups. Tota Tech makes a controller converter. I don't know its quality, but it goes PS1 and PS2 to Genesis, so I was thinking maybe I might give that a whirl. I hope it doesn't mess anything up. But
no, I mean I've used some PlayStation 1 and 2 to USB converters, testing out some other random boards that did the same thing that Retroboard does. So it's really interesting. It's kind of like the classic. Being a Genesis guy, I'm sure you'll appreciate this. You have the Sega CD with the Sega mashed onto it, but then the 32X on top of that, and then of course you've got to use Sonic and Knuckles in there somewhere, and then you plug another any other Sonic game. Oh, and then to make it even crazier, you put the Game Genie in there, so that you try and make it as tall as you possibly can.
Oh, Vice has done that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I actually have a picture of it going. It even has like the power base converter for the Master System, and it has like a cartridge of Altered Beast on top.
Oh yeah, that was like the tall cartridge, right?
No, it was just it was just a funny game to want to play all that with, like the end
Oh
game
yeah,
you playing
all the conversions.
not even Altered Beast, but like Sega Master System Altered Beast. It's not even like a good version of a bad game.
Wasn't that where you could like turn into a shark? Like, did they have that one?
No, that's Famicom.
Oh, okay,
the
okay. 'Cause
Famicom
I know there were
version's
different
the weird
animals and
one.
different Altered Beasts.
Yeah, no, that one's weird. They had added a couple animals to that one, like Sunsoft programmed that one. It's real weird.
Oh, by the way, going back to the whole idea of the Genesis having like certain signals for the 6-button controller and everything, that reminded me of something. This is just like a weird quirk, and this may be a dumb question to ask for the particular kind of hardware you're producing here. But I remember reading again on Hardcore Gaming 101, they had an article on the fighting game for the Saturn, Golden Axe: The Duel, and it's basically the arcade game, which is kind of cool, but. What they had a caveat in there that said that the 3D Saturn stick, because normally a Saturn's controller is basically a Sega Genesis 6-button controller with an L and an R, but there's that 3D pad which was basically designed for Nights in the Dreams. I remember the article said that the game won't work with that controller plugged in, and it won't even like boot if you have it in the beginning. So like. Could there be an issue where like certain games have weird quirks, or is that like, or maybe it was just the stick was designed weird? Like, I don't know. I'm just wondering how that might work with the retro board. Like, I'm wondering if it would be possible to play like something as esoteric as Golden Axe: The Duel with a fight stick.
Yeah, so I don't, to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. So the good thing about the Saturn is it uses kind of a more data-centric approach to communication with the controller versus a kind of a button press approach like the Genesis does. So I think that's one of the ones that I'm gonna have to try and pick up and test because I don't know. There's always going to be weird quirks. In my opinion, there's always going to be weird quirks with old hardware and new hardware, right? Because at the time the game was developed, I'm assuming that they probably partnered with a joystick manufacturer who said, hey, if we're going to do this for you, we want exclusivity, right? Because exclusivity is like the holy grail in business, especially when you make a really cool product. So I would assume that with the limited knowledge about it that I have, there's probably some tie-in associated with it. Is it hackable? Probably. Although nowadays, Saturn was one of the last consoles, I think, to be able to be hacked so you could emulate it, and that took years to do, right? So I think it's one of those ones that we find a game and send it, we try it out, and if it doesn't work, send it to Brooke and see if they can reverse it.
Fair enough. Actually, even Vice, you might be able to test that out, because I know that you have the game, and unlike me, you have the stick too.
I'm
a pleb. I'm not a stick guy, so I'm the odd one out here.
I'll give it a shot right away. Maybe we can even do a test, video or something like that.
That'd be rad. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I know you're offering like the Aki Shop, I guess it's overstock of their wires now on your website. Is that what you were doing, or?
Yeah. So actually, Vin over at Arcade Shop called up Aki Shop and said, "Hey, I want to buy a bunch of these cables," and this was months ago. The only people that knew about the retro board were he and I, and then Brooke. So I think Vin had an overstock of PS360 pluses anyway, and those cables over time, the little tab on them breaks. People want to replace them. Mm-hmm. There is the Cthulhu out there that still requires them, so it's not crazy to still get those kind of things made. So I think he bought a bunch, and I just went in on the order with him. And that was kind of one of the kind of guiding principles of the design of the retro board was, and that all of the boards really is, I want it to be easy and as inexpensive as possible for people to upgrade to it. One of the ways you can save people money is if the cables are the same. So it didn't make a lot of sense to try and change it out and do something different because, Aki Shop did a great job kind of developing a standard there. And, Cthulhu uses the same standard. Why mess with success? A lot of people have cables they've already made. Why not just, keep going down that path? So we're able to do that. And we're actually in the process of getting some Nintendo, some Super Nintendo and Saturn cables, as well as PC Engine and GameCube cables made up as well.
That's awesome.
So-
Yeah, I had to really seek out somebody that made like a batch of these when I was originally putting this together, when I had gotten my original board from you, and I was able to get them from, I think Gummo is his name. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he made them from overstock of extension cords, so he didn't have to ruin a controller, which is cool.
Yeah, that's what I did, and unfortunately, I actually cleaned my office up yesterday, so I don't have it readily available. But that's what I did with my GameCube controller cable. I actually had like 5 or 6 extension cords in one of my random bins. I was like, oh, perfect, clip.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, I didn't have any extension cables for my Super Nintendo or my Famicom, so I had to take a $20 round trip train ride up to Akihabara one weekend and go raid the junk bins. And unfortunately, I was only able to find one junk NES controller, and I had to buy a $10 working Super Nintendo controller. And as I'm like cutting the cable, I'm like, I really hate doing this.
Yeah, it feels bad, man.
Yeah, I know. There's a supplier out there that's making extension cords for those old systems right now. I have a friend who works at a video game store, and they're I think it's Retrobit is making them. So you might have some luck there. I don't know.
You're talking extension cables? Yeah, I was there just today. I saw a few.
The problem that I found with a lot of these extension cables, and this has kind of been my experience, is I'm trying to get new cables made too, because Aki Shop had a very limited scope in what they did. They had the Dreamcast, the PlayStation 1 and 2, and then the USB. A lot of the prototypes are coming in, and the molds aren't quite right for the end connector plastic piece. So, like, to get the NES one to fit, you have to use a little muscle, and that's not good. And the same thing kind of with the Saturn. So, those kind of went to the, all right, well, these are great, they work, but this isn't good enough. So we need to find, a different supplier.
Gotcha. Well, I know also that you're offering a lot of different configurations of your RetroBoard, which I was really impressed with. You definitely thought about it in all the ways that you thought that somebody might use this. So it's not just you can use this, with your Universal Fight Board, which you could sandwich on top, right? You could use it by itself. You can use it in a lot of different ways, and I just thought that was really neat. Will this be compatible with your easy install products for all of your sticks and all that stuff?
So it kind of. So the thing that we got to remember with the easy mods is that they were all designed for new modern sticks that use USB. The RetroBoard itself, the USB connector on it, the 4 pins, I believe it's J7 or something like that, is in the same spot as the 4 pins on the for the Universal Fight Board. So in a lot of the, like, for example, well, you didn't experience this in the Quamba, but like in the Panthera or the VLX, the Universal Fight Board gets some female headers soldered to the bottom of the board, and it kind of sandwiches down, and we use just some cables to wire it up, jumper wires. And unfortunately, excuse me, the RetroBoard doesn't have a traditional USB out. That J7 is actually USB in for that USB switch that we were talking about earlier. So with that being said, those easy mods were really designed to add universal functionality to USB-based sticks. Thinking through it, there's a lot of ways that you could add the RetroBoard to a build and that has the easy mod in it, and it would work fine. The key is going to be getting an RJ45 connector on the outside of the case. So like if you take, for example, like the Panthera, probably not terribly hard, because on the back there's a lot of surface area of just empty plastic, if you will. So you can drill out and put a Nutrix adapter or something like that there. T2 probably a little bit more difficult, but still possible. The key really would be tying the USB from the Easy Mod or the Brooke board to the RetroBoard, and then obviously the signal wires. So a lot of people have asked me questions and asked if I'm going to do how-to videos on how to do all that stuff, and I would love to be able to do that for all of them. Unfortunately, every stick costs money and time and videos and stuff like that. So unfortunately, there's going to be some generic modding things that you have to think about when you do it, and because both boards have screw terminals on them for all the signal wires, to me that is the easiest way to put them in an existing stick with, say, a easy mod installed, because in none of my easy mods do you have to use. That's not true. That's a lie. On the fighting edge and the wrap end, you have to use the screw terminals because of the way Hori made their sticks. But you can link up the boards using the screw terminals. You can just do a simple jumper wire between the two if you can't stack them on top of each other, which is the case in most of the easy mods. And then you could just route the RJ45 out, and then just maybe clip one end of the USB connector off of a standard USB 2.0 cable, plug it into the jack on the UFB, and then solder the wires to the retro board. And that's how I would do it in most situations.
Yeah, I was taking a look at the Obsidian, and I was just like, if I were to do this, which I'm not, I'm making a second board specifically for retro stuff here, but if I was adding it to my Obsidian, I would put the Nutric right in the wired door. I think that's inside right in there. There's a flat panel, so you can use that, and I guess I would need to solder pins on top of the UFB because it would need that ribbon cable to talk to the retro board.
Well, that would be one way to do it. Unfortunately, I think you're going to end up with it being too tall for the bottom. Yeah. So that's where I think linking up the two boards using the screw terminals on the side, punch one to punch one, kick one to kick one. That would probably be the cleanest and easiest way to do that. And then instead of routing that one wire up to the board, that replacement board that I provide for USB, you could route that over to the retro board and then solder it, tack it in place in those 4 spots. So
yeah, it's something to think about, but I'm glad that I already had the hardware for the Panzer, to do it with. So I'm glad that I went that route. So I know that you're just getting off this ground for off the ground for the month of August. Are you working on any other new projects other than this? I know this is your big huge thing that you just announced, but are you thinking down the line anything else that you're looking into?
Yeah, so I'm always trying to think of new ways to bring simple, easy, accessible designs to the market, and I've got some things in the works in the supergun world, and we've got some, there may be some retro stuff out there that we may be thinking about here as well. The TE2, the TE round 2 and the TE could use some love. I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy mod love, but there may be some stuff we're working on for those. And then, of course, the supergun, I've wanted to do a redesign of the AdCap supergun for a long time, and I think I'm about ready to pull the trigger on starting the groundwork for that as well.
Those have been becoming more and more popular. Superguns are like a thing that are in demand right now, I think.
Yeah, they are, and it's unfortunate that I moved to Japan when I did, because one of the big momentum, one of the big drivers for momentum for as fast as I can work at times is the desire and demand for them. And there's a lot of supergun makers out there right now that are making some good stuff. But I think I can still do it better, and I'm never really happy with anything. The Panzer III's been out for about 2 years now, I think, and I'm itching ready to do something new already, to make it, just try something new with it.
Sure.
I haven't actually started doing anything there, but I'm seeing kind of some things that I want to do, and kind of switch it up a little bit, and hopefully, if the cost makes sense, we can add a new Panzer IV maybe in the near future.
Great. How about you guys? Do you have any further questions for Jason here while we have him first time?
Alright, so I guess what's your favorite officially licensed stick?
Oh man. To be honest with you, I don't really like any of them right now.
Oh really?
I'm very obviously I got to be very biased, because if I say, oh, this one's my favorite, then people are like, oh, Jason likes that one, maybe I should buy that instead of one of his. No. Obviously, I think everyone should buy a Panzer, because everyone's going to love their fight stick. To be honest with you, I think probably the Wrap N, the Hori Wrap N, is my favorite right now.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. I love that one.
It's just, it's got a lot of room for activities inside, if that makes sense. So, it's a wide open shell, a lot of spots for random mod type stuff in there. I was able to do a hitbox panel for it, which was really cool because usually with the way the sticks are designed, especially with the plastic cases, that's kind of one of the reasons I don't really like a lot of the sticks out in the market right now is they just use too much plastic. But Hori did this weird thing where they have this weird half moon shape molded into the plastic that's just, it was, when I broke it down and I did my video on it, the first thing I said was, this needs a hitbox panel, and I think Hori knew that. So,
Oh, wow.
so that's, I think that one's my favorite. I like the little door over the options button. It kind of reminds me of like, you see Top Gun and they flip the trigger guards up to, get to the guns or the missiles. And it kind of reminded me of that. Yeah.
I love that.
And it's just, it's a decent sized case. It doesn't weigh a lot. So, and Hori makes some pretty good stuff in general. So, not good enough that I can't make it better with new stuff, but I think that's probably my favorite right now. Unfortunately, I really wanted to like the Fighting Edge, and it's just not as cool as the last one. It's
the metal one, right? You're talking
yeah.
about? Yeah, because I like the last one with like the light up like side panels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, it just looked really nice and clean. So
exactly.
Like when I looked at the new one, I was like, it's kind of a step down.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. I like the brushed aluminum overlay, and that's actually a nice metal panel on there. Yeah. But the wrap end, it's just got a good artwork. It's just overall, it's a nice fight stick, and it's very well priced too. And then unfortunately, the Quamba stuff is okay. I don't want to knock the Obsidian too hard. I think it's the best one they make out of all of them right now. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's some quality control things that people have ran into with them. One of my friends got shocked on his because the LEDs broke on the side.
Oh wow.
So he's like, what do I do? And I was like, well, go in, disconnect these wires, and you should be fine. And he's like, oh yeah, it worked great, thanks. Now it just doesn't have LEDs on the side. And unfortunately, the response to that was contact your the person you bought it from. And then they said, well, you opened it and replaced a button, so your warranty's void. Which now, fortunately, in the United States, we've got the new right to repair laws that went in, and those warranty void if removed stickers no longer mean anything. So
yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, it's just like a scare tactic at this point, unless it's just plain outdated.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like one of the first things I do is pop a hole right through that thing and open up a fight stick.
That reminds me, it just cracked me up
did.
when I was trying to crack open like an original Xbox console, because I wanted to see if we could the original like version 1.0 Xboxes had 2 extra slots where you could put in RAM chips, and you could double the RAM it had, and I was going to look into do that, and it just kind of cracked me up because I bought the thing in like 2016 or something, and it's just funny to flip it upside down, and it's like, no, careful, if you open this, it voids the warranty. Like, oh, well, what do I want to do that?
I better not open this.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Tear off the label on your mattress, right?
Somebody uses like sirens and stuff like, freeze.
I know, like there are so many like common rules that people don't care about, but like, God help you if you tear off the label on your mattress. Like Seinfeld had a joke about that, like when you're putting your clothes in the wash, like, you fool, that's dry cleaning.
My favorite one is, oh man, I only have 45 days of WinRAR left.
Yeah.
I gotta buy it.
Yep, I actually saw that this morning.
It's so good.
Every day for the last 15 years.
Yeah, you're just sweating as the days count down.
Yeah.
It's like that meme of that superhero like pushing that button.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like time to memory wipe my entire computer and download WinRAR for the first time, so I don't have to break that day threshold.
Yeah. But so kind of the wrap in, like I said, it's my favorite. And then for the Quamba stuff, I think the Obsidian's probably the best stick they've made. The glow, or what do they call it, the crystal now, that's pretty good. There's a lot of room in there too, but it's not as good as the Q2 glow was in terms of modability. The dragon, it's a nightmare. I hate it. Just to be blunt, the dragon is terrible. I don't like it at all. Sorry, Columbo.
Yeah, what's the deal with it? Like, I know that's their top of the line stick, right?
Yeah, it's one of those. Mr. Ryu, you may agree or not. I don't know. I think a lot of effort went into making it big, expensive, and look pretty.
Yeah.
But that's it. I think that the guts inside are nothing better than anything in any of their other stuff.
Doesn't it have like some sort of like weird plexi casing thing in it? Like.
Yeah, it's so when you flip it up, and that was one of the ones I really wanted to do an easy mod for because I've heard a lot of people complaining that the Dragon lagged and had some latency issues, and I was like, oh, we can fix that. We'll just put a Brooke Universal Fightboard in it. That'll fix it all. And then I picked one up from Arcade Shock and I got it in the mail. I was like, ooh, cool, let's open this thing up. And I pulled it out of the box. And as soon as I flipped it up, I went, nope, closed it and put it right back in the box. There's just, they did a lot of stuff to make it look pretty. They cover up a lot of the, the insides with plastic fairings and stuff. And it looks really nice, but from a technical standpoint, it's not worth it.
Yeah, because I was looking at that price tag and like I saw someone have it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to spend like, it was $300, right? Like on that stick. So I was like, I'll just stick with the like Hori Real Arcade Pro.
Yeah.
Also, I have a Vulix. It's really nice.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's too big. I can't put it in my lap.
Yeah, no. I actually have the Diamond. I've got the VLX Diamond, which is the white one with the blue sides and had the brushed aluminum top on it. It looked like the Diamond VLX arcade cabinet. Nice. And then I picked up both the new red and black one that they came out with for the PlayStation 4. Just because they looked sexy. They're a great looking fight stick, and you sit down in front of one and you put it on the table and you're playing, and it feels like you're sitting at a Vulix cabinet. And that's
I love that.
So,
it's just that it's a terrible tournament stick.
Oh yeah, no. Carrying that thing around, that's like carrying a Panzer II around. No one wanted to do it, and that's why I quit making them because they're just too big and too heavy.
Yeah, the Panzer II had a two player on it, right?
No, so that was the Panzer VT. That was the VT. That was a two-player stick. It was basically like two Panzer IIIs mashed together and made a little bit wider for big American guys trying to cram around, trying to play at the same time.
Yeah.
The Panzer II, unfortunately, I wish I had my Panzer II down here because I actually brought that with me to Japan. It was about 18.5 inches wide, and it had plexiglass on the bottom. It had two USB pass-throughs on the outside and a whole host of buttons and whatnot. And the playfield, you could replace it.
Neat.
And it wasn't a piece of metal stacked on top of a case because then you kind of get into some weird sharp edge type things you got to worry about. Then you can't put plexiglass and stuff like that. It kind of sat down and it was flush with the rest of the stick. And that thing was awesome, but it weighed a ton. It was probably about a 14.5 or 15 pound fight stick.
Wow.
And,
yeah, the Panzer III is heavy as it is. It's
8.5.
Wonderful.
8.5.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of why I've kind of stayed away from the big sticks because the VLX, beautiful, love it, great for modding activities inside. It flips open, you got all sorts of room in there. Just not super convenient to bring it to Evo or something like that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I think that's probably I would say that's my actual favorite stick that Hori makes. It's just not a practical stick, so that's why I'm saying the wrap end. Unfortunately, the guys like Mad Catz, when they went out, the TE2 was decent. They had some flex issues with the top and the whole weird button rings that allowed you to swap artwork without taking the buttons out. Caused some issues, but it was a decent platform. But I think the best one that Mad Catz ever made was probably the TE Round 2, or the TE, the first one, if you will, for Street Fighter 4. I think a lot of people still hold that stick in high regards, and that's why people want to mod it and do things with that because they just like that form factor.
Oh yeah, that was a great stick when it first came out. I was like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's kind of my rundown on fight sticks as it is. But I like everything. To be honest with you, I'll collect everything. I'll end up with 100 of them around the house. I came here with like 3, and now I've got like 7 again. I don't even know how that happened. So
They
it's just
multiply
like,
when
hey,
you're not
bored.
looking.
Yeah, well, it's, oh, hi, I'm bored. Let's go check out the recycle shop. Ooh, they got a virtual stick high grade. It's only $20. Yes, I'll buy this. Crap. Oh, it's a box TE round 2. I don't need it, but it's only $60. Yes, I'll take it.
Yep.
Yeah, and actually, that's probably what I'm going to do today. Is if I can't convince the wife to go out and head out to the Lantern Festival in Enoshima tonight, I'm going to probably take the train up to Akihabara. I've been eyeballing a VLX, the white one with the red sides that one of the U shops has.
Oh yeah.
So, every time I go up there, I'm like, oh, it's too hot. I really don't want to bring that big thing home with me today. I don't want to bring it home today either. But it's still there because I think.
Oh, I know. I feel like
It's so big. When I got like mine during an Evo sale, like I think it was like 2 years ago. Like I saw the box and I was like, "Oh my god, that's gigantic."
It is. Yeah. Did you go to Evo 2016?
No, I did not. I just like there was a sale I think in Arcade Shock. It's like,
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure if you picked it up there because that's the one Evo I've actually been able to make it to.
Actually, I've never been to an Evo before, but I always wanted to like attend at least one Evo.
It's crazy. It's a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of fun.
I would like to go for some of like the unofficial tournaments because I like the goofy games that that each other everybody plays each other in a lot of times. You know, like I'd love to see what a high level urban champion tournament would be like.
I want to see high level GameCube Lost Kingdoms competitive play.
Actually, there was a side tournament for that busted Arxis like Hokuto no Ken game.
Oh yeah.
Like I've seen like a stream, I think it was last year, where a guy was getting hit by an infinite. So the guy just like puts his stick down, takes out his wallet, and tries to bribe the guy to stop his infinite. That's stream.
Did anybody pull Shin's like jump out the window move for laughs?
No.
It's like, I don't feel like winning today. Yuria just jumps out the tower.
I think that move is like really hard to pull off, and I don't know why you would ever want to like do that.
Oh, because it's hilarious. Like
I know it's
Tobal
hilarious.
number 1 has a robot called Ham, and he was like my character I played as back in the day. But like it was something like if you press all the face buttons on the PS1 controller at the same time, he presses that big conspicuous button on his back, and he just shuts down. And that's it. You just like turn off. He has a big stupid like power button on his back, and that's it.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's like that Treehouse of Horror episode with the Krusty doll. Like,
yeah.
Flip him
Good,
from evil to good. We're done. Like,
all right, Mr. Ryu, anything else you wanted to enumerate on here?
I think that's it for now.
Okay. Well, I really want to thank you, Jason, for taking time out of your day, to share everything here with us. You certainly gave an extensive interview here with us, and graciously answered all of our questions here. Do you want to know where? Do you want to let our fans know where you can be found and all your content and everything?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thanks. So obviously you can pick up Panzers and all that good stuff for the new retro board at my website. That's www.jasonscustoms.com. And that's Jasen, because my mom and dad thought it'd be funny to misspell my name. And it haunts me to this day. And then obviously facebook.com/Jason's Customs and at Jason's Customs on Twitter. And then obviously, well, maybe not so obviously, I do have some YouTube videos up. I try and export my Twitch streams out to it, so you guys can watch how bad I am at video games and occasionally see me upgrade or build stuff. And that's Angry Jason on YouTube. Unfortunately, once you create a channel, they don't let you change it, or I haven't been able to figure it out.
Oh, I know.
So
don't I know it? I still have my freaking like high school URL like from Slayer's Try.
Yeah, so 19-year-old angry high school college kid still exists. But yeah, so YouTube/user/Angry Jason. I think that's how it works. But you can obviously get to all that stuff from my website, and you can. Shout out to ArcadeShock.com as well. They have a lot of universally applicable installation options for the retro board. So if you have a very specific stacked installation you want to do, obviously you can pick it up from me. And then if you have a more generic style install you need to do, pick up a sweet kit from ArcadeShock.com.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot. Thank you again. We'll have our classic outro here now. Whoa. That's the show for this week. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. And while you're there, go to Jason's feed and give him some love, too. It helps us promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Thursday on our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Switch, and Battle.net.
And you could follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince, where you can see how quality may vary I am at video games. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you're interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games to Let's Play, or even getting on a Discord with me and all the patrons, then consider swinging by my Patreon accounts, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And I guess if you really want to, you could probably friend me on PSN as Mr. Ryu45. It's like MR_Ryu45, and that's pretty much me on most platforms, including like Twitter. But I don't know why you would ever want to follow me on my Twitter, because I don't post on it.
You know what you should do? You should fight Mr. Ryu as Mega Man in Tekken Cross Capcom, or Tekken Cross Street Fighter.
Oh, Street Fighter Cross Tekken? You mean like Glitch?
Yeah, Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Like, I'm out of here. Bye.
No, my favorite. I think they patched it out, but my favorite was when you still did that Rolento jump backward, throw the knife diagonally downward at the Ryu fireball, and just crash the game.
That was a really bad thing. That was a really bad bug.
All right, guys. Well, you can catch us on Thursday on Corrective. Catch ya.
Until next time, everyone.